So with this kind of creating with this wizard, you will not know how he created this infrastructure, but he will create this infrastructure for you. Or he will suggest, he will ask, where do you want this infrastructure to be created? One, he will create an internet gateway for you, and it will create a public subnet. This is the VPC that we have. This VPC already have internet gateway. They will create a public subnet, and there will be an internet gateway to the public subnet. They will now create a private subnet. Then that private subnet will be talking to the internet through this public subnet with the help of the internet gateway. Then that gate that he used in talking to the internet is called a NAT gateway. So actually, this NAT gateway is not here. The NAT gateway is here, but this one is connecting to it. You understand? Now, that IP address, that IP link that he used to connect to the internet is called elastic IP, AIB. You understand me? That is what this will be used. That elastic IP restrict internet access from it, but it can connect to the internet. Why do we do this? In case this server wants to update, you don't need to connect the regular system to be loading update, to be patching it up. You understand me? You can just update this server or update the instance here. This instance has internet to it, but the internet is not connected. Internet does not have to it. So you have egress. That's you have egress, does not have ingress. So you cannot connect to it, but you can connect to the internet and work as if it has internet. But the people outside your network cannot reach it because it's private. You understand me? So what I'm trying to do, let me bring it back to the way we have been explaining. You have a farmland. This farmland, you have created your control to the farmland. And in that farmland, you have two huts in this farmland, hut A and hut B. And you say this hut A, anybody that comes, the visitor can come and stay in this farmland. But this one, nobody can enter. This is your inner shaba, aka your inner room, Zaoza room, according to our Oga. You know what I mean? This is Zaoza room. But this Zaoza room needs to have access to the outside. You understand me? That way it connects to the outside is called the NAT gateway. So I believe I brought it down to the barest understanding. So you should understand what I mean now. So if I said use this subnet, what he does, it will create it. Now it's not asking me, okay, are you seeing? Imagine I'm used to using the same CIDR block. That's the same CIDR block we used just now. If I say yes, it will not say okay. What's the name? I can call it cloud enthusiast 2. Two. Then it's telling me I have the same thing. Now it's telling me now, okay, this public subnet, which I just showed you earlier, which area do you want to put it? I will say, okay, put this. Imagine in this region, we have this availability zone. That's this region is like Oregon. That Oregon, Oregon, if you divide the city, their data centers, their data center, the way they organize it, they have in 2A, 2B, 2C, and 2D. So they have like 4 data center connected together in one place. You understand me? So in this 2A, I want my public subnet to be in this 2A. Then I want my private subnet to be in 2B. You understand me? So they are different, they are separate. So automatically, this one will now have internet gateway attached to it, to the public. This one will have this called a private subnet and public subnet. I can decide to name it. Then we'll call it John or Cloud Enthusiast private subnet, public subnet. So I think that it's not even supposed to have space. Let's make it a conventional, the real way of doing it. Okay. Now it's telling me, look at it. It said now for this public subnet to work, it needs an elastic IP. I should allocate an elastic. Do I have any elastic IP before, or do I need? I want it to create for himself. I say create for himself. There's no one. There's no one. So I was okay. Now since there is no one, I will need to create one for myself. Understand me? So for me to create one, I'll come here, I'll click this. So it's telling me to create, and I will need to create because without it, it will not work. I need to allocate. So most times you create a public, something like that. You create it there. So this endpoint, I will tell you the meaning of endpoint, but not now. I don't want us to be doing this endpoint thing. This endpoint is talking about, I will tell you what it means. Yes, that means it's mostly for Docker and EKS. So I wouldn't want to bother you with that now, because we'll go in there. I wouldn't want to bother you with that. So now it's telling me that for this thing to work, I need to create a NAT gateway. So let's create a NAT gateway. If I click here, I have to create a NAT gateway. Then I'll not assign that elastic IP for the NAT gateway for it to work, or else it will not work. Okay, DNS hardware, create VPC. Do not work because why? There's no elastic IP. So for me to, and elastic IP, you pay for it. Although there are some free they will give to you, but if you increase more than that, you pay. So you see the reason what you are trying to avoid from creating, you are still coming back now, Abi. You are trying to use shortcut, and at the end of the day, you are still going to create the elastic IP. So why waste all this time? But let's just create it for creating sake. So for you to create an elastic IP, you have to have an internet gateway, you have to have a public subnet. So, and all these things is stressful. It's stressful. So what's the name of the internet gateway? Let's call it Cloud Enthusiast. So you see the reason why people are saying cloud is very, very, very complicated. So if I don't have, it will not tell me allocate. If you look at it, hello, please hold on. Please hold on. If you look at the allocate, the first thing is asking me is that you want me to allocate which of the subnet has public. So you must allocate elastic IP from a subnet that have internet gateway. So it must be a public subnet. You create it from it. By the time I say allocate elastic IP, you have already given an elastic IP to that region. So most times I always delete it. I always delete all my elastic IP. That's why he's asking. I should have had one already allocated here. You can imagine. You look at what I just created just now. I've already given me an elastic IP. So with this elastic IP, this private subnet can, through this elastic IP, connect to the internet. You understand me? So I collected this elastic IP from this public subnet. When I was creating one just now, you see, it asks me. So please take note of this. Okay, also take note of the CIDR block. You see the CIDR block, when you are creating a private subnet, you see 10.0. So the 251 IP address is going to come from here. So I'm going to have 10.0.10.0.1 or .2 or .3 or .4 or .251 /0, because the IP address is going to come from here. You understand? It's going to be in this place. So that's why it's starting from 1 to 256. So that is it. When you are doing for here, you are going to start from here. You understand me? You can start from here. This is for your subnet.
Sorry. Can I ask a question, please?
Go ahead, please.
Now, the IP address, said it has to start from 0. I mean, the second or third octet, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and what that means is because we have network and host, right?
Yes.
The first 2 octets are for the network, and the last 2 octets are for the host.
Okay.
And what that means is that this 251 IP addresses available is 251 networks available, which means 251 subnets available.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm correct.
You are very
and
correct.
then
You are very correct.
for instance, if you have 10.0.1,
Yes.
10.0.2,
Yes.
it goes all through to 51.
Yes.
And then our network will now be maybe 10.0.1,
Mm-hmm.
.1.1,
Mm-hmm.
10.0.2.1 until it gets to 10.0.251. Whatever network IP address, because the one there, the third octet there represents our network, which is going to come from the 251, counting down from 1 to 251, right?
Yes. Yes. What you just said now is the complete thing. So it's more of a technical. I can see you have a very you are the network person. You are a pure network infrastructure person. From the way you sounded, it's very obvious that you are a network person. You understand me? So that's why when we are talking about networking, infrastructure, solution architect, infrastructure engineer, there are many things that make up infrastructure engineer. A network person must be there. Then when we have the operation, we have the sysad, we have the so many aspects. But let's not go there. What he just said is the truth. You understand me? So this is from here, this part here that we have one. Now you still have 251 to do. So you can create 251 subnet from this network. From this network, you can see the first subnet took 0. The second subnet took 1. So you can create another subnet that has 2. You understand me? Down till you exhaust the 251. You understand me? So, but basically, it's difficult for you to have a network that you have all those resources. Fine. We know some giant companies have so many stuff. They use so many stuff, but most times what we do at the infrastructure level, if you are using a Kubernetes or you are using a Docker, you are just going to launch 2 instances. Are you getting me? So those your Docker is going to have their network inside, embedded inside. So you don't need to think about that. Most times, those Docker IP addresses or those pods, let me not go far, please. Let me not go far. I don't want to confuse us here, but we'll get there because we are in DevOps class. We'll get there. But just have the mind. We're going to be talking about pods. We're going to be talking about nodes, talking about connections. And you're going to be talking about that. Please prepare your mind for it. But let's take it one step at a time. So that is it. So for now, this is it. So automatically, if I use this wizard, it has saved also many stress. Are you getting me? This save also many stress. That's where this endpoint is telling you about. So I don't want us. I'm trying to avoid it. But there's the one interesting thing about AWS. The more you start, the more you just find yourself going deep. So I say enable domain name, default. I'm not using dedicated. I'm using. So if I say create VPC, it will create a VPC. It will create a VPC with public and private subnets. Oh, okay. Imagine what the message is telling me that I have exceeded my number of VPC because I'm using free tier. You understand me? So in my free tier and my own particular stuff, they are limited VPC. You know, I've been having classes, so I can go to my VPC and delete the one that I know I'm not using. But if you want to delete a VPC that does not have any public IP address, if I want to delete a VPC that does not have a NAT gateway, it's easy. But if the VPC has elastic IP, it's not going to be that direct. You are going to delete it one step at a time. So let's assume, I want to assume that this two does not have. Let me try to delete one. Let me try to delete one. If it has an elastic IP, I need to go from the beginning. This one does not have elastic IP, was the one we created now. So I can delete, just click delete. Remember when we were doing role, when we were doing IAM, remember we did IAM, I talked about the right to delete and the right to create. You understand me? So this IAM rights, I am using the admin rights. So it's not all right has the right to delete. You understand me? It's not all I can decide. Okay, this one is default. And also be careful. Don't delete your default VPC, because there are sometimes you want to use code as a service, infrastructure as a code, and if you don't have default VPC, it will be difficult for you. It will be difficult for you to make use of. Now, this one, he said I can delete this one because this one does not have. So, but if I have an elastic IP, or there's an instance, maybe an EC2 instance, what I mean by instance, I mean there's a server. If there's a server attached to it, I cannot delete it like this. You understand me? I cannot delete it like this. So let's continue. Hope I'm recording this. Okay, I'm here. Okay, now let's go to, we have talked about VPC. Let's create that VPC we are creating that gave us that error. So I say, okay. So you see, I have to start all over again. So, but you all understand what I'm trying to do here. Let us start all over again. Let us do it. Let's say cloud, H2. Then I don't need to say much already. I said this one should be in A. This one should be in B. Then there's already elastic IP. The one we created that time is already here. Then there is there's a DNS. I'll say, okay, create a subnet and public subnet. Then enable DNS hostname, yes. Okay, if I say create, it will create now. I still have, in this region, I still have some subnets too. I think I have two stuff. So waiting is creating a NAT gateway, is creating all the subnets. Then it will attach the existing internet gateway that we have in this account, because you are supposed to have just one internet gateway to any account, or you can create more than one internet gateway anyway. But one internet gateway is enough for you for one account. So this is it. Just it will take some time if the network is not. But there are so many things that are going on under. There are so many things that are going on at the background that you are not aware of. So this is it. Now I'm going to go back and create. You can also create a VPC, and hybrid VPC, the one that you can also connect your on-prem data center to. You understand me? So that you will have one VPN, two VPC, you understand me? And everything will still go like that. So it will take a little time to create, if it has not created. To create, then it has not been created. Okay, it's still creating. So what is it creating now? It's creating a NAT gateway. Are you getting me? It's a NAT gateway. It's waiting for NAT gateway status to be available. So you're going to create a NAT gateway. Then after creating the NAT gateway, it will now create all the subnets, and the thing will be available here. So if you want to do a basting host, I'll explain to you a basting host. Those of us in networking already understand the meaning of basting host. A basting host is like an adapter. You know, you want to talk to, you have two things on ground. One, you can access one, you cannot access the other. So you want to use the one that you can access, to use that one as a tip, as a route to access the other one you cannot easily access. You understand me? With the act of using the one you can access to access the other one that you cannot access directly, it's called a basting host. It's like an adapter. You understand me? Remember we mentioned one is a public subnet, one is a private subnet. That private subnet, you cannot connect to it from outside your network. If you want to SSH into that private subnet, it's going to be difficult for you. You understand me? So most times what you do, you connect through the one that is in the public subnet, which is the one that have internet. Then from that one that have the internet, you now use that one to create another one. So sometimes you can put a server in the public subnet. Then from that server in that public subnet, you now connect to the server in the private subnet. So that server in the public subnet is now your basting host or your adapter. You understand me? Well, I want to be talking about it. There's a class I have for it. which I'm going to also share with the group. So it has been created successfully. So if you see it here, if I refresh this page now, it will show. So this is the most easiest and fastest way of creating subnets, creating a VPC. You can see it's here. So if I click here now, to tell me all the details about it. Tell me all the details about it. These are the details. There's no IPv version 6 pool, but there's version 4. This is the IP address. There's no default VPC. It's not a default VPC. It's the VPC we created. That's what it's trying to tell you. Then we have ACL, that is access control list. We have a route table. If I click this route table now, it will tell me the kind of route table I have. Look at the subnet I have. It will tell me I have this is the subnet. You understand me? Without explicit association. So if you can get all the parameters, the edge association, the route propagation, everything. You can get all the tags. We did not tag it, so it will not have any tag. So the details, this is the details of that route table. So I'll explain what's the route table as we go on. So let's try and create. Now we've created a VPC with a single VPC with a single public subnet. We have created a VPC with private and public subnets. Then we can also create a VPC directly from the scratch. That is where the real work is. That is where you need to know what to do. You understand me? You need to know what to do. So now I want to have more space. So let me delete one more VPC so that I can have space to create VPC in this region. There's something I want you to understand. Every VPC have a unique ID. Every VPC has a unique ID. That's why I can create two VPC with the same number, but they are not the same. Despite they have the same CIDR block, like this one now, it has 10.0. I can create another one with same 10.0, or should we try it? Let's not waste the time. We can create 10 of this VPC. But if you look at this VPC, it has a unique ID. It has a unique ID. So if I'm launching any instance, I'm using a code and I want this instance. You understand me? Look at this ID. This ID is unique. It's unique to this VPC. Every VPC has their own unique ID. So that's the ID you can use to identify your VPC. You can see this one also have a unique ID. You can see it's different from the first one. This one is 169. So I end with 169. But this one will have different ID. Okay. This one also ends with 169. Are they, wait, 133? No, they are not the same. They have different, they have unique, they are not the same. They may end with 169 as the thing is. We have 133987462 Let's look at the second one. Nine 169. They may look the same, but they are not the same. You understand me? There's a digit that is different about this. Okay, this is the owner ID. Sorry. I'm the owner. Sorry. Okay, this is the unique ID. That's the owner ID. That's me. That's my own ID that identifies me. So if I'm launching any instance, this is the number I will call. If I'm using Terraform, if I'm using any code, I don't want to come here. I can copy this number and keep. I will say launch my instance on top of this VPC. So this ID here, sorry, as I was saying, this is my own ID, is the owner ID. This is my unique identifier. This is my unique identifier number. This is the unique ID. All subnets too also have their own unique ID, and everything has their own unique ID. So now let's create VPC from this crash. You can see this is no longer using the wizard. So they assume now that if I'm coming here, I know what I'm doing. So I can call it a tag. What's a tag? A name tag. Let me call it cloud. Oh God, no, now the time is fast spent. Cloud E2. Now let's call our own. Maybe I mentioned that it's not compulsory you use 10. I can decide to use 115.0.0.0. It will still go /16. It will still create. You understand me? But it's not always advisable. Use the best practice. Now I say create IVPCs. I can say create IVPCs. If I have one, I don't have any. I can say create one. I can say create the one that Amazon provide one. This one is one I own by me. I don't have IPv6. I can say create one from AWS, but I don't need it. The tenancy, I'm using shared. I'm not using dedicated. Then the tag name, Cloud Enthusiast. I create VPC. Now, if you look at this VPC very well, as I'm creating it, it doesn't have anything. It doesn't even have DNS name. Understand me? It does not have DNS name. It's just VPC, just like that. There is nothing special about this particular VPC I just created. So I can now come and modify, understand me, and do all my work. It has a route table. The route table does not have any good route. It has a ACL. Then if you look at it, it does not have subnet. There's no subnet attached to it. There's no subnet attached to it. There's no pool, nothing. But I just created it now. So it's empty. Understand me? There's nothing. So what I will do, I've created this VPC. What I will now do, I'll come and create a subnet for it. Okay, this is the VPC we just created now. Okay, this is the subnet we already have before. Let me delete some so that I can have space to create another one. Let me see, can it delete? Does it have any ACL? We can see, you say one of them has ACL, that's elastic IP, to not delete. So the ones that can delete, this one, remember when we were creating this one earlier, we added EIP to it, elastic IP, so it cannot delete, or I have to delete elastic IP first before deleting that subnet. So please, this thing, for those of us that are preparing for exam, they will answer you questions like this, especially if you are preparing for this practitioner, they will answer you this question. It's a simple question. They will ask you this simple question. Okay, now let's go to subnet. Now, in this subnet, it's asking me which VPC do you want to create this subnet on? Look at all the VPC available. Are you with me? The one we created just now is 15.0.0.0. You understand me? So I will say I want it to be on this. So meaning in one account, you can have 20 subnets, but the subnet, the private subnet, and the VPC, they are just there. They are just like a pool of resources. So anytime I want to launch instance, I'm going to use either of them. So this is the subnet I'm creating. What's the name of the subnet? I call it cloud E/subnet. Then the availability zone, I'll say, okay, put it here. The insider block, since I use 15, if I use 10 here, it will not work. If I use 12.0.0/16/24, it's not the best practice. It will not work. It's not the best practice. It will not work. I'm always advised If I must use anyone, I have to use the same CIDR block family. And since this is where I have my 125 CIDR block stuff, I can decide to put 3 here. It's not compulsory I start with 1. I can even put 200 here. I can put 250 here. You understand me? I can even put 251. But if I put 252, it will not work. You understand me? Because I have 251, I can put the 151 here. It will work. Then will ask me the name. You already have a name. Then target. I can decide to create another subnet. Maybe I don't want to just waste the time. I can create a subnet 2 and call it cloud A2 and for subnet 2. Then asking me where I've created one in 2A. Let me put it on in 2B. Then the CIDR block, since I'm still using 15 CIDR block, let me continue with 15 dot 0 dot, maybe I put 120 here, 120 dot 0/24. It must end with 24 because I'm using the same. It must be the subnet, the 2 subnet must be the same for them to communicate. You understand me? Must be in the same CIDR block. This is /24, it must be /24. If I'm using /30, /32 or /28, must remain in /28. So that is it. So the 2 CIDR block are upon this VPC. So now let's create it. Mind you, the subnet I created now, you cannot call it private subnet or public subnet. They are just, both of them are private subnet because they are your subnets that I created that does not have internet gateway attached to it. So these 2 subnets are private subnets. So it's not that it's a must until you put a NAT gateway. That's what makes it a private subnet. No. A subnet that you create within your private VPC, your VPC that does not have internet gateway attached to it is a private subnet. That is simple. So in case you're asking for interview or exam, what is a private subnet? What is a public subnet? The VPC must have an internet gateway attached to it for you to have a public subnet. You understand me? Because the VPC that you attach is the gateway, internet gateway you attach to your VPC that your public subnet is going to connect to. Are you getting me? So that is it. So now we've created a private subnet, now a VPC. Now this is the VPC we created now. So in our house, sorry. So this is the VPC. Now this is the CIDR block. Let's see the CIDR block. This is the flow. So it's, if you want to check the subnet attached to it, can come here and click. You click. No, it's not a default VPC. Route table, then the flow. So you can edit, delete, manage tags. So there are two subnets that is attached to it, to this VPC. 2 subnets attached to this VPC. I think I will find a way to get the subnets now. Okay. So we have 2 subnets attached to this VPC. I'm just trying to, let me see if I reduce the size. So you get to see it, especially when you are using it. For example, if you even call a private subnet, you will see that it already have Now, there's something that I want you to also know before we forget, before we dive into another thing. You see, edit DNS hostname. So some subnets, you can, this is where you enable the DNS hostname. A DNS is like a conversion of that IP address we just have into a name. Are you getting? But since we are not using Route 53, it will create a DNS host name, something like this.